ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वमनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे फुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला ग्रहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकाः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं। लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः। In Bhagavad Gita, we came to the point where Arjuna surrendered himself to Lord Krishna, and thus now a new relationship between the two is established, that of the teacher and the student. So far they were friends. Krishna and Arjuna, both of them were friends so far. And up to this point, of course, Lord Krishna was the charioteer and Arjuna was the master of the chariot. But now the relationship has changed, where Arjuna expressed, Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapannam. I am your disciple, I am surrendered to you, you please teach me that which can bring in my life Nishreyasa, the ultimate good. So this shows here a conversion or a transformation in Arjuna. As a one who entered the battlefield with a desire to conquer, he was very proud that single-handed he can win this battle. So with that idea, he entered this battlefield. And in course of this, from the moment that he started observing the people arrayed on both the sides of both the armies, from that point on, when he saw all the relatives and friends and kith and kin arrayed in both the armies, and he could see in his mind's eye the prospect of that tremendous death and destruction that will follow as a result of this battle, and which brought about a tremendous amount of grief, obviously, because it was the death of the near and dear ones. And that grief gave him a certain perspective of life which perhaps he did not have so far. And he could see the limitations of all possible gains that were there potentially before him. Gains in terms of the victory, kingdom, and all the power and the pleasures that this battle could bring to him. He could see the limitations of all of them. He could very clearly see how the suffering, the pain that he has, how the burning sensation that there is in my body and the sense organs, and how the pain and the grief which is in my mind cannot be eliminated even if I win this battle and I gain the kingdom of the whole earth, or even if I gain the kingdom of all the three worlds, that this suffering cannot be eliminated. This fact somehow he could see. And that is important for us. Not necessarily the placement between the two armies, or the peculiar situation that Arjuna had is perhaps not that important to us, except that he was grieving, that is important. That there is a grief in the human heart, which grief for somehow or the other so far was veiled behind his other priorities. He was too busy with other things of life, other achievements, and so this grief which may have been there had no opportunity to manifest itself, and now it manifested itself when he found himself helpless. He reviewed his whole life and saw this fact that he has not done what he should have been doing. He has no doubt done a lot of things in life. He had achieved a great deal of things, and for which there is value that other people value, and which he also valued so far. But then he could see that he has not done what he should have been doing. And thus he finds himself completely confused and completely deluded with reference to even the present situation as to what is proper and what is improper. But that is not the primary problem of Arjuna. What to do in this situation? That should I fight this battle or not fight the battle? I should fight the battle because I am a Kshatriya, I am a warrior, and therefore it is my duty to protect the righteousness and fight this battle. But I should not fight the battle also because it is going to involve the death or the destruction of such a large number of people. And in its wake, it is only going to bring about all kinds of sufferings and misery as he described in the first chapter. And thus, looking at the consequences of this battle, which he interpreted as himsa or violence, he could not get around or make himself see this fact that he can perform this violence. He did not see any purpose behind that, because this violence would give him perhaps victory, etc., in which he found no interest at all. And thus, from this standpoint, that this battle involves himsa or destruction, that it does not yield any result in which he is interested. From that standpoint, he could see no meaning in fighting this battle. And therefore, he wanted to renounce everything. He wanted to become a renunciate. And he wanted to even beg the alms, which is what we call bhiksha. And he was quite prepared to lead that kind of a life. Meaning, give up his present station of life, which is that of a warrior and that of a householder. Give that up and assume another status, that of a renunciate. This he was prepared to do because he thought that was a better solution than this conflict. So this conflict is there. On one hand, he should fight the battle because it is his duty. On the other hand, he doesn't want to fight the battle, or he does not think he should fight the battle because battle involves himsa, violence. At the same time, it yields results which are of no consequence to him. But this conflict brought about that grief also and made him see review his life. And from there he came to a more fundamental appreciation somehow that the problem does not merely confine itself to this particular situation where he finds himself totally confused or deluded as to what decision to make. But this, what we call the situational problem, arises from a much more fundamental problem about total confusion about life as to what am I doing here and what is it that I have achieved so far. He could see that what all achievements he had made so far had not yielded what he is seeking in life, namely Nishreyasam, that ultimate good. Or what potential there is in front of him in terms of achievements also will not yield for him that Nishreyasam, or the ultimate good. And so he found that what he has been seeking in life is Nishreyasam, is ultimate good, once and for all. That's what he is seeking in life. This is what he found out. So this grieving mind of Arjuna has revealed an appreciation on his part of the fundamental need of Nishreyasam, of that good which is ultimate and once and for all. This is what he finds he actually is seeking in life. And that this battle or anything that he knows of cannot become the means for attainment of that, and therefore he is seeking that knowledge from Lord Krishna, who is now the teacher. In this state of mind, he saw a teacher in Lord Krishna. And in this state of mind, he saw in himself a disciple. So this situation had to arise. It is not that Lord Krishna did not know that Arjuna is ignorant or that he needs his knowledge. And they were together, they were friends, very close friends, and therefore were together for almost the whole life on so many occasions. And Lord Krishna could have perhaps in a different situation imparted this teaching. But then Lord Krishna never volunteered because Arjuna never asked for it. It is said that this knowledge must be asked for. Na prushtah kasyachit bruyad. This should not be told unless it is asked for, it is requested for. So maybe Lord Krishna was waiting for an opportunity wherein Arjuna could realize the need for this and ask for it. And Arjuna did. And therefore Lord replies him, Tamuvacha Rushikesha Prahasanniva Bharata. Rushikesha means Lord Krishna. Rushikanam Ishaha, the one who is the Lord of all the sense organs. One who is the indwelling self, and therefore one who knows. Prahasanniva Bharata, as though laughing or smiling at Arjuna. As though sort of making fun of Arjuna, Lord replies. There is a smile on the face of the Lord. You look at this, Arjuna is grieving, almost weeping. And when Lord Krishna replies to him, there is a smile on the face of Lord Krishna. And therefore, this is subject to criticism. People ask, how can you laugh at a person who is grieving, who has surrendered to you? How can you make fun of him? But it's not so. It's not making fun of him. But then there is a smile, which is very difficult to interpret, because Lord Krishna being what he is, it's difficult to interpret that smile. Whether in that smile there is some kind of little cunningness, wherein he is waiting for this opportunity, I knew you will come around one day. Is it that kind of a smile? Or rather the smile of the one who understands that there is no need to grieve. What for are you grieving? And he knows that this grief is going to go away, and therefore a smile of the happiness that now this person has come to the right point, right source, right place, and that he will be free from grief, and therefore he is smiling. Or he smiles at the stupidity of Arjuna, that how he talks very wise words, in fact he reveals only his ignorance. Is that why he is smiling? So different ways you can interpret the smile of Lord Krishna. We can say it can be a smile of compassion or kindness also, and in that situation then, Arjuna, who was grieving, to him Lord Krishna started imparting the teaching from the 11th verse. However, before we proceed to the teaching of Lord Krishna, here we'll take a brief look at how Shankaracharya interprets all that has gone on so far in Bhagavad Gita. All the 47 verses of the first chapter and the 10 verses of the second chapter, whatever has been covered so far in these verses, Shankaracharya explains the subject matter that has been covered here without going into the commentary of individual verses, but goes into what is the theme of all these 57 verses, what is conveyed by these verses. That theme Shankaracharya discusses. Says Atracha Drashtvadu Pandavanikam iti arabhya Nayotsede Govindam Uktva Tushnim Babhuva iti etadantaha Praninam Shokamohadi Samsara Bija Bhuta Doshodbhava Karana Pradarshanaarthatvena Vyakyayo Granthaha. Drashtvadu Pandavanikam, that first verse of Sanjaya, when Dhritarashtra, the blind king, asked Sanjaya, his minister, to report to him what was happening in the battlefield, when his sons the Kauravas and the Pandavas, with a desire to fight the battle, had assembled in the battlefield, and he asked him to report to him what happened, what did they do. And Sanjaya started reporting from this verse. The Duryodhana, seeing the opposite, the enemy army being arrayed, then what he did, etc. So, all beginning from that point, right up to Nayotsede Govindam Uktva Tushim Babhuvaha. Arjuna, with tears in his mind, in his eyes, and grief in his heart, told Lord Krishna, Nayotse, I will not fight. Iti Uktva, saying that, Tushim Babhuvaha, Arjuna became silent. Arjuna was talking. He did a lot of talking. And Lord Krishna was silently listening, without interfering at all. And perhaps Arjuna may have even felt frustrated, finding no change of expression at all, or no signs of sympathy on the part of Lord Krishna, or whatever it is. But having expressed himself, and having made his case for not fighting the battle, ultimately Arjuna said, Nayotse, I will not fight. Iti Uktva, having said, Tushnim Babhuvaha, Arjuna became silent. Up to that point, what is it that this text, in all these verses, what does it have to convey? Says, Praninam Shokamohadi Samsara Bija Bhuta Doshodbhava Karana Pradarshanaarthatvena Vyakyayo Grantha. This Grantha, this whole text up to this point, can only explain as it is there for showing the Karanam. What's the cause of Samsara Bija Bhuta Doshodbhava? That these verses here, or this text, explains to us the very cause which gives rise to what we call the dosha, which gives rise to the defects of what we call samsara, or life of suffering. And what is the characteristic of what we call samsara? Samyak sarati asminiti samsaraha, that in which one keeps on going from one situation to other, from one suffering to other, let us say, from one birth to another one, is called samsara. Meaning this life of limited existence, life of seeking, chasing the goals from one to the other, this life is called samsara. And what is the symptom of the samsara? Shoka mohadi. Shoka means grief and moha means delusion. The shoka and moha, grief and delusion, are identified by Shankaracharya as the symptoms or the signs or evidence of the fact that one is a samsari, that one is undergoing what we call this transmigratory existence. So shoka and moha, grief and delusion, etc. etc. means other products, likes and dislikes and whatever, anger, passion and so forth. So samsara, that is called samsara. And what is it that causes the shoka and moha? Why is there grief and why is there delusion? What is the cause of it? Cause is ignorance. Therefore, text so far wants to demonstrate that what we call samsara, or this life of suffering, is characterized by shoka and moha, grief and delusion, and that is common to all the beings, there is no exception. And that this shoka and moha, the grief, delusion also has a cause, and that cause is ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of the true nature of the self. So ajnanam, avaranam, veiling, or ignorance of the true nature of oneself, which gives rise to what we call vikshepa. Vikshepa means a projection in the form of shoka and moha, delusion and grief. And that gives rise to further difficulties in terms of a sense of bondage, sense of inadequacy, desire to become free, all kinds of actions performed from there, a number of results accumulated on account of that. And this whole business, the whole chain of action and reaction proceeds from that. And so, it is not important, the details of these verses is not important according to Shankaracharya, but that these verses are meant to convey that ignorance is the cause and that the symptoms or the evidence of samsara is shoka and moha, which evidence or symptoms we find very intensely in Arjuna. There is an Upanishad called Ishavasya Upanishad, which says that when there is knowledge, yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevānupashyati sarvabhuteshu cha atmanam na tato vijugupsate yasmin sarvani bhutani atmayeva bhut vijanatah tatra ko mohah kasyokah ekatvam anupashyatah. There Upanishad says that when one discovers that all there is only oneself, when everything has ultimately turned itself into oneself, meaning when one recognizes oneself alone as manifesting as the whole universe and including oneself, tatra ko mohaha kashokaha. When there is this knowledge or this vision or the knowledge of this ekatvam, the unity or the oneness underlying every existence, then where is shokaha, where is moha, where is the room for grief and delusion? Meaning that when this knowledge of the oneness of the self comes, then there is no scope for grief and delusion. Meaning that grief and delusion that we feel in life is only a product of ignorance of the true nature of oneself. And what is the oneself? Oneself is the self of all. That there is only one self, one without a second, and that alone is. This knowledge alone will eliminate the shoka and moha, grief and delusion. It is true that different activities and different achievements in our life may momentarily push aside or push into background this grief and delusion. And so there are moments when we find ourselves free from grief, but they are only temporary moments. When the effect of whatever we are doing goes away, then again the grief and delusion, again they take hold of us. There are moments of happiness, there are moments of achievements, there are moments of success, or whatever you call them in the world, when we forget momentarily our grief, all right? But then when the effect of that moment is gone, the grief comes back again. And so grief and delusion is the common symptom of all the human beings. And as long as ignorance is, so long one cannot get rid of it, regardless of wantonness in one's life, regardless of all the achievements, everything that one does. Unless the ignorance goes, this grief and delusion cannot go. Now, this is a statement that Shankaracharya makes and explains in the subsequent commentary. To illustrate, tathahi, to illustrate. In this particular case, so this is a conclusion that is universal conclusion. That there is ignorance which gives rise to grief and delusion, and that gives rise to all the suffering in life. And how do we find that in this particular case? That is illustrated by the case of Arjuna. Tathahi Arjunena Rajya Guruputra Mitra Suhrit Svajana Sambandhi Bandhaveshu Ahamesham Mama Eti Evam Bhranti Pratyaya Nimitta Sneha Vichedadi Nimittau Atmanah Shokamoho Pradarshidau Katham Bhishma Maham Sankhye Ityadina. We see Arjunena Shokamoho Pradarshidau. Arjuna, in so many words, expresses the grief and delusion that he is experiencing in his heart. Where do you find it? Katham Bhishma Maham Sankhya Ityadina. Arjuna says, Lord, you are asking me to fight. How can I fight against such revered ones as Bhishma and Drona? He said, Bhishma is the great grandsire, in whose lap all the children have grown. And who is Drona? Dronacharya is the very teacher from whom all these people have gained the knowledge of archery and warfare. And so, father or grandfather and teacher are the most reverential people. I should have been worshipping them. Instead of that, you're asking me to send arrows at them. How can I ever do that? And that gives rise to That is a sense of grief that he expressed. He said also, instead of killing them and enjoying all the pleasures, it's better that I leave this battlefield and I beg the alms than lead the life of a renunciate. I think that is much better to lead that kind of a life than enjoy these pleasures which are stained with blood of these people. So all these statements on the part of Arjuna express his tremendous grief. And also he himself says, I am totally confused as to what I should do in a given situation. Should I fight or not fight? That also expresses his moha or the delusion. Thus, from the very statements of Arjuna, we can see the grief and delusion with which Arjuna is suffering. And what's the cause of that? How come when Arjuna fought the battles before this, that this problem did not arise in him? That he never experienced the grief, the kind of grief that he is experiencing today. And how come this particular battle scene has created so much grief in him? What is so different? As we said, just a few months ago means few months from that battle of Kurukshetra, which we are talking about, a few months before that event, Arjuna had fought a battle with essentially the very same people in the kingdom of Virat. And he had in fact conquered them all, and those fellows had run away from there. And thus Arjuna had already proven his prowess. At that time also, there was no grief in his heart. Very happily and boldly he did that. And of course, before that, any number of battles he has fought, he never felt the grief. And what is the reason why he is feeling the grief now? Shankaracharya says, Aham esham mama ete. Aham esham, I am theirs. Mama ete, they are mine. This kind of a sense had never come to Arjuna before. That I am theirs and they are mine. This kind of a sentiment, if you want to call it, or emotion, if you want to call it, or a thought, if you want to call it, had never arisen in Arjuna before this point. So it is not the battle really which is the cause of his grief, because he has fought any number of battles. What is the cause of grief? What this particular battle has surfaced, has managed to manifest from within him, and that is this sense of the identification. I am theirs and they are mine. Swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinasyama madhava. Hey Madhava, oh Lord, how can we be happy killing our relatives, our own people? Swajanam, our own people. Drashtvemam swajanam Krishna yayutsum samupasthidam. Hey Krishna, seeing this swajan, our own people assembled here to fight, and thinking of the consequences, I shiver. So he identified all these people as swajana, his own people, and identified himself also as belonging to them. And it is this identification, what we call mamakara, or the sense of mindness, or the attachment. The attachment that he had for these people, it is attachment which actually has caused the grief. Attachment for whom? Rajya, Guru, Putra, Mitra, for kingdom, for the teacher, for the son, for the friend, for the well-wishers, and for the followers, Sambandhi, the relatives, Bandhava, the friends and the family members. Towards all of them, he now developed this sense that they are mine, they are mine, they are my people. So his problem is not so much killing, how can I kill my people? Who is going to die? Not the people are going to die, my people will die. And that's what has caused the grief. So cause of grief here is the sense of myness. And therefore, evam bhranti pratyaya nimitta. This is bhranti, or this is delusion, that they are mine and I am theirs. And therefore, sneha vichcheda nimitta. There will be sneha vichcheda, that there will be severance of my love and my relationship with them when they die. So what shall I do without them? And how will I be without them? And what will happen to them? And thus, sneha vichcheda. Sneha meaning the attachment or the love, affection rather. And vichcheda, a severance of that affection. That when they will be killed, then I will be without them. And what will happen to them? So, grief that arose in the mind of Arjuna is identified as arising from what we call an attachment or the sense of identification that he had for these people, which further caused the grief because he will be now deprived of them, or he will lose that affection. Without them, what will he do? He will be all alone, and what's the use of this kingdom without them? And so, yesham arthe kangshanah rajyam bhoga sukhaninah taime vasthita yuddhe pranam stektva dhananija. Lord, those for whom we wanted this kingdom, they are all waiting here, they are all standing here in front of me, having given up their life and everything else, and so what for do I want the kingdom? And so all these very expressions of Arjuna shows what? A sense of identity which arises from the attachment for these people. So it is attachment which is the cause of his grief. Not that he was otherwise, that all of a sudden he has become, he could be a conscientious objector, etc. also. But more than that, it is attachment. And because he takes himself to be an individual, he takes himself to be a body. He identifies himself as Arjuna. And who is Arjuna? It is the body who is characterized by the name Arjuna. And he calls himself Arjuna. Therefore he calls Bhishma as his grandsire. Therefore he calls Drona as a teacher. Therefore he calls Duryodhana as a cousin or my friend and my brother. So all these relationships are possible only when I take myself to be the body, to be an individual. And so identifying with one's own body is then a more fundamental problem which arises from the ignorance of the true nature of myself. So ignorance gives rise to identification of the body, gives rise to the sense of relationship, that they are mine and I am theirs, and that gives rise to the grief arising from the consequences of the battle. Okay, so Arjuna exhibited shoka and moha, or grief and delusion. But how do you say that grief and delusion cause the samsara or the suffering? Then Shankaracharya explains further. Shoka mohabhyam hi abhibhuta viveka vijnanah स्वतः एव क्षात्र धर्मे प्रवृत्तः अपि तस्माद् युद्धात् उपरराम परधर्मं च भिक्षा जीवनादिकं कर्तुं प्रववृते. What is the symptom? How do you say that the person is deluded, that he is moha? See, shoka, the grief is something you can see from the eyes of the person, or whatever it is, because his eyes was flooded with tears. But how do you say that he had delusion within himself? But that is something that is in his own mind, and with nothing, not something that we can see. But that delusion is, we can infer that he is deluded. He has this moha delusion from his behavior or from what he wants to do. Says shoka mahabhyam hi abhibhuta viveka vijnanah. The person whose viveka vijnanam, whose discriminative knowledge, abhibhuta, has been overpowered by shoka moha. Only when one's discrimination or sense of judgment, sense of discrimination is overpowered by or is clouded by the shoka and the moha, grief and delusion, then there is a tendency to give up what is proper for oneself and to take up something which is not proper for oneself. This is what Arjuna demonstrated. Swatah eva kshatra dharme prabhuyuddhe pravruttah. It is he who came to this battle by his own choice. Swatah eva. It is important that nobody forced Arjuna to come to this battle, but then he came willingly by his own choice. And also by his own choice, what did he choose to do? Kshatra dharme pravruttah api. Yuddhe, he was ready to fight this battle, which is kshatra dharma, meaning which is the duty of a kshatriya or a warrior, to which class Arjuna belonged. Thus, he had himself by his own free will chosen to come to this battlefield to perform his duty as a kshatriya or a warrior on his own. This is how it was. Tasmad yuddhad upararama. Now on his own he says, I don't want to fight. Nobody has told him not to fight also. First of all, Krishna did not ask him to fight. He came on his own, and now on his own he says, I will not fight. Tasmad yuddhat upararama. He desisted from this yuddha or the battle. Not only that, meaning giving up one's own dharma or what is proper for oneself and taking up something which is not proper for oneself, this is a symptom of moha or delusion. When a person is deluded, then one does not see what is proper and what is improper. What is proper is interpreted by one as improper, and what is improper is interpreted by one as proper. Adharmam dharmamitya manyate tamasavruta sarvarthan viparitams buddhissa pasa tamase. In the 18th chapter, Lord says that buddhi or the intellect is tamasi, overpowered by tamas or delusion. When adharma or what is unrighteous is interpreted by oneself as righteous dharma, and what is dharma or the righteous is interpreted by one as unrighteous. Sarvarthan viparitamscha. Thus, one interprets totally contrary the various artha or various situations in life. This is called tamas or moha. And this is what Arjuna exhibits. That he wanted to now desist from yuddha, which is his dharma. Paradharmam cha bhiksha jivanadikam kartum pravavrute. And he showed a willingness to adopt a life of renunciation, which is not his dharma. A kshatriya and a warrior and a householder, it is not his duty, his dharma, not proper for him to become a renunciate and then start begging the alms. Thus, he desired or expressed a desire to do something which is not his dharma, which is not proper for him, and he also declared that he will not do what otherwise is proper for him. So what is his dharma? That he wants to give up. What is not dharma of him? What is somebody else's dharma that he wants to adopt? This is a sign of moha or delusion. Understand? Generally, whenever life becomes tough, when the going gets tough, then we want to generally cop out from there. Then we think, no, this is all wrong. Why should I do this? Then my mind finds out all kinds of arguments. Oh, I don't know why I was doing it so far anyway. This is all wrong, And thus, you have all kinds of wonderful arguments. Swamiji, I don't believe. Somebody says, Swamiji, I don't believe what my institution does or my company does, They sell things. I don't believe in this. They push their product in the market. I don't believe in that. As though you are a great philosopher, now, that your company is doing something. I say, you do what you have to do. Why should you worry about what they are doing? But there is some other problem inside. But that problem manifests itself as a resistance or a desire to cop out from or escape from a given situation. And then the mind finds its own justification as to, yes, why one should not get away from the situation and why should not one get into a more cozy situation, under the blanket, cozy. It's nice to cover oneself under the blanket. It's very nice. But then it is not necessarily proper. So this is a symptom of the one who is suffering from what we call moha or delusion. And therefore, this expression of the behavior on the part of Arjuna shows how he is mudaha, he is deluded, because he wanted to give up what he himself had undertaken to do, and he wanted to do now or take up something which really is proper only for someone else to do, because it requires a certain frame of mind. And that will be the theme of Bhagavad Gita. Shankaracharya says all this having reviewed the whole Bhagavad Gita. Because what does Lord Krishna teach? Lord Krishna teaches two things in Bhagavad Gita: how to act and how to renounce. Both the things he teaches. Bhagavad Gita is going to teach us these two things: how to act and how to renounce. Because Arjuna's problem was action and Arjuna wanted renunciation. And therefore, Lord Krishna addresses Arjuna. It happens to be a problem of everyone. But Arjuna had a great fascination for renunciation. Not in this country, no one will have fascination for renunciation. But in India, you can find a number of people having fascination for renunciation. For whatever reason, there is some attraction in this cloth. There is some attraction in this way of life. Maybe they have seen some people who are renunciates and must have seen them as happy and free. Or whatever it is. But people have some fascination. Or maybe they want to just get away from where they are, and this promises all kinds of freedom from all responsibility. The renunciates are those who have no responsibility at all, and that they love, perhaps. Actually, they don't realize that a renunciate has no right also. And when they realize that actual situation in life, then they realize that no, this is not what I was looking for. When you know responsibility, you know right also. If you are willing to give up all your rights and demands, fine, you can give up the responsibility. And anyway, but Lord Krishna is going to teach here. Sanyasastu Mahabaho Dukkhamaptum Ayogataha. Hey Mahabahu, meaning O Arjuna, O mighty armed Arjuna. Sannyas or renunciation is extremely difficult and painful unless there is a discipline of yoga. Unless one is mature. If Arjuna had that maturity, Lord Krishna would not hesitate. Yadahankaram ashritya nayotseti manyase mityaisha vyavasayaste prakritistvam niyokshati. Ultimately in the 18th chapter it will be said, ahankaram ashritya, by taking the ashraya or refuge of ahankara, of pride and ego, you are saying that I will not fight. This statement of yours that I will not fight does not come from your wisdom. It does not come from your discriminative understanding. It comes only from this sense of ego. Had it come from wisdom, it's not that everyone who says I will not fight is necessarily egoistic. It can be a statement of a wise person also. And therefore, there is nothing wrong in fighting or not fighting or doing or not doing. Where does it come from? Your desire comes from where? Does it come from wisdom, discrimination, or does it come from ahankara or ego? Yad ahankaram ashritya nayotseti manyase. It is taking a refuge or motivated by this ahankara or the ego that you are saying, the nayotse, I will not fight. Mithyesha vyavasayaste prakritistvam niyokshati. This vyavasaya or this determination, resolve on your part is mithya, is false, is not going to last long. Prakritistvam niyokshati. Your own prakriti or nature will prevail upon you and make you do. Svabhavajena kaunteya nibaddha svena karmana kartum netchasiyan mohat karishyasi avashopitat. As controlled by your own nature, what at the moment you do not want to do on account of your delusion, you will find yourself doing under the impulsion or the compulsion of your own nature. So Arjuna, you not understood what exactly your mind is and what your real desire is. And therefore, without understanding yourself that you are willing to now give up this action of battlefield and take up to the life of renunciation. So no doubt Arjuna's desire is very noble, because the Vedic culture or the Hindus recognize renunciation as the ultimate goal of life. And if so, somebody wants to renounce, it is something very desirable. Provided that desire for renunciation comes from where? It comes from raga and dvesha. His aversion for the present situation creates in him an attraction for another situation. It is like the grass is always greener yonder, You go near, then you find out what it is. And so also Arjuna does not know what it means to renounce. And therefore, his desire to become renunciate and his desire to go away from the battle, to give up this action of fighting, has arisen not out of a clear discriminative understanding, but has arisen out of what we call the attachment and aversion. Raga and dvesha. Dvesha or aversion for the present situation, raga or attraction for a situation which is in future, not here. And that's why Arjuna is saying it. That's why Lord Krishna does not sympathize with him. He is kind, all right. But internally he has to educate him. Otherwise if the child is crying, don't worry, okay, don't worry. Okay, you don't want to fight, go away. I'll fight for you, which he is capable of doing. But it doesn't show that kind of sympathy, because that will not help Arjuna. He will he'll come again, weeping on another occasion. And therefore, this causes to go once and for all. Therefore, Lord Krishna addresses that fundamental problem which causes this delusion and likes and dislikes and grief in the heart of Arjuna. Okay, this is what you find in Arjuna, but then, is there a special case of Arjuna that he wants to give up what he should properly be doing and wants to take up something that is for which he is not fit? Is it a special case of Arjuna? He says no. This is what we find happening. Wherever we find this happening, you know that this grief and delusion is there. It's not a particular case of Arjuna, it is a case of all deluded people. How? Tasacha sarva praninam shok mohadi doshavishta chedasam svabhavatah eva swadharma parityagah pratisiddha seva cha syat. So people very often want to imitate others. People want to do what is good. Lord Krishna says, no, do what is proper. Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharma. See how this is addressed by Lord Krishna in so many verses in the Gita. Shreyan swadharma viguna paradharmat swanushthitat swadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. Hey Arjuna, Shreyan swadharma viguna. Therefore you want to do. What is good to be renunciate, therefore I want to be. No. What is good for you, that's what you should do. In India, this is a big problem because everybody wants to renounce. Whoever comes to Vedanta wants to renounce. And we have to calm them down, I said, well, wait for some time. Listen to this for some time. Observe your mind. What are your different urges and desires in your mind? And then respect them. He said, no, it is wrong to desire, therefore I will not entertain my desire. There is nothing wrong anywhere. It is wrong to get married, therefore I don't want to get married. What is wrong in that? There is nothing wrong in anything if that's what you find is your need. So discover what your need is and respond to that rather than how, don't imagine an ideal and then respond to that imaginary condition, but be realistic about what exactly you are and respond to that. So Vedanta doesn't say one should do, they never give you any instructions of do this and don't do this. Vedanta always teaches us and makes us own up ourselves and do what is proper to do. And if that doing requires taking risk, fine, do that. But just because it is fearful, therefore you don't give it up. And so, kaya klesha bhayat tyajet, again 18th chapter says, people give up their job and duty because kaya klesha is too straining, and it is it's too painful or whatever, it is exerting. So they give it up. That is not renunciation. And thus, keeping all in mind all of this that Lord Krishna is going to teach Arjuna, Shankaracharya here explains what is the problem as Lord Krishna sees in Arjuna. Tathacha sarva praninam shok mohadi dosha vishta chedasam. And so also for all the living beings and all the human beings, because other living beings don't have a problem. They have no delusion. A cat is always a cat. Not that sometimes it feels like a dog and some other times feels like donkey, but human being has a problem. Sometimes he feels one way, sometimes he feels some other way. These difficulties are only with the human beings. Other people are spared of this pain and suffering. There will be pain, all right, but there is no suffering there. A cow has no regrets, and that doesn't have any guilt and things of that sort. Whereas this person has all kinds of hurts and guilt. Cow doesn't get hurt. If it gets hurt, then it will immediately retaliate without feeling any sense of guilt. I get hurt, I don't retaliate, I build up within myself, and all kinds of problems happen to me. So when even Shankaracharya says sarva pranina, it is really the problem of the human beings. So sarva manushyanam, that's what it is for all the human beings. Shoka mohadi dosha vishta chedasam, which are these people whose mind is avishtam, whose mind is overpowered by shoka mohadi dosha, overpowered by these defects of grief and delusion. Svabhavatah eva swadharma parityagah. We find that all these people who are under the spell of grief and delusion, all of them have this tendency to give up what is their dharma. Pratisiddha seva jasyat, and they also show a tendency to adopt something which is not their dharma. Understand the word dharma. By what dharma is meant here, what is in keeping with one's own disposition of mind, one's own aptitudes, one's own samskaras, with which one is born and with which one has grown. And so at a given point in time, we find our mind showing certain dispositions, aptitudes, likes, dislikes. Dharma will be what is proper for that mind. So one performs an action that is in keeping with one's own aptitude, one's own abilities, one's own duties. That's called dharma. So, people under the spell of this delusion and grief are seen to naturally desire to give up their dharma or what is proper for them to do, pratisiddha seva jasyat, and desire to do that which is prohibited for them or which is not proper for them. Says, does it mean that all those people who are doing that duty and all those people who are doing what is proper, that all of them are enlightened people? Another question. You say that the people are deluded when they give up what they should be doing and then they take up something that they should not be doing. Okay. But then there are a number of people we find who are true to that duty and very sincere and honest. Should we say that they are all necessarily enlightened people? Said no. One further. Swadharme pravrittanam apitesham vangmanah kayadinam pravritti phalavisandhi purvika eva sahankara cha bhavati. What's the other symptom or the evidence of this delusion? Is that even a person, swadharme pravrittanam api, even those people who are pursuing their dharma or their duty or what is proper for them to do, then that is not enough. But then we have to see with what motivation are they doing. Phalavisandhi purvika. Most people do their duty all right, but with an expectation of the reward. So when you find people attached to or there's an emotional investment, I have a lot of emotional investment in this work or action that I am taking. What is emotional investment? Attachment to the result, I assume, What else is it? Meaning that if the result does not come as I expect it to be, I will be emotionally upset. So, phala visandhi purvika. So, most people, therefore, even when they are doing what they should be doing or performing their duty, we find that they are performing those tasks or their duties as motivated by a desire for reward. And sahankara cha. And in them, there is also this keen sense that I am doing this. And therefore, the sense of doership also is very keen. And therefore, we find that when there is ignorance in the person, therefore there is a delusion about one's own nature, then even when one performs an action honestly and sincerely, there will be a very strong sense of individuality that I am doing this. And secondly, we will also find that that action is performed as motivated by the desire for the reward. Then we know that he is also an ignorant person. His grief may not be as evident as the other fellow. One who wants to run away from the situation and plunge into another situation, his grief is very evident. And this fellow does not run away from the situation, his grief may not be very evident, but definitely it's there inside. How about the people who are performing duty without the reward, expectation of reward? Are they enlightened? Alright, let us ask further question. Do they have a sense of doership? Do they have the sense of individuality and doership that I am doing it? Yes. Then we know that even that also is a sign of ignorance. So understand what ignorance does. Ignorance of the nature of the self, first of all, creates ahankara or sense of individuality, and therefore kartrutvam, a sense of doership. When it is confounded, meaning more intense, then what else does it create? An attachment for the reward. When it's further confounded, then what does it do? Likes and dislikes. A dislike for what one should do and like for what one should not do. Thus in stages, this ignorance manifests itself. Most people you find are grieving and therefore not following the dharma and doing something that they should not be doing. Some people are following the dharma all right, but highly attached to the reward. And some others very rare, who are not attached to the reward, but still they are quite egoistic. Now egoistic means functioning from a sense of individuality and aware that I am doing this. Even that also shows that they do not have the knowledge of the self, who is in fact actionless or not an agent of action. What happens? Suppose you perform an action thinking that you are doing it, meaning there is a sense of doership, and you perform the action with a desire for the reward, then what happens? How does it land you into samsara? Shankaracharya explains that mechanism here. Tatra evam sati dharma dharmopachayat ishtanishta janma sukha dukkha samprapti lakshanah samsarah anuparato bhavati ityatah samsara bija bhutau shokamoha. Tatra evam sati, this being the case, meaning there is ignorance, which gives rise to sense of individuality, which gives rise to the sense of doership, which gives rise further to an attachment to the results of the action. When this is the case, dharma adharma upachayat, then two kinds of action a person can perform. One is called dharma, which is righteous action, keeping with the value and keeping with the values. Other is called adharma, which is not righteous, where the fundamental values are sacrificed. So dharma, action in keeping with the values. Adharma, an action in which the values are sacrificed or compromised. And a person will essentially do both these kinds of actions. Even a person who is very honest and righteous, now and then he may find up performing actions which are not righteous. And a person who is not righteous at all, now and then may be performing actions which are righteous also. And therefore, everybody essentially performs actions which are a mix of what we call dharma and adharma. In someone, dharma is predominant, adharma is minor. In someone, adharma is predominant, dharma may be minor. In someone, dharma and adharma may be in equal proportion. Anishtam, ishtam itya. Anishtam, ishtam, mishram cha. Anishtam, ishtam and mishram. So these are the three kinds of karma. Dharma, adharma, upachayat. But anyway, when I perform an action with this sense of doership, then I am the karta, I am the doer of that action. And whoever is karta or the doer is the one who is the beneficiary of the result. The one who is karta today becomes a bhokta tomorrow. One who is a doer today becomes an enjoyer tomorrow. Because the result of the action will necessarily land upon the one who is a performer of that action. It cannot happen that I perform an action and that you are stuck with the result, or you do something and I am stuck with the result. That cannot happen. The fundamental law requires that whoever performs the action must necessarily experience the result. If the action has been dharma or righteous action, what is the result? Ishta, desirable. If the action has been adharma or unrighteous, what is the result? Anishta, undesirable. And thus, we keep on performing a series of actions. What? Vang, manah, kayadinam. Many actions I perform at the level of body. Many actions I perform at the level of speech. And many actions I perform at the level of mind. Each one of these actions may be classified as dharma or adharma, righteous or non-righteous. And each one of these actions keeps on producing what we call the effect in the form of ishta and anishta, desirable and undesirable. And these effects keep on building up in our account. From that what happens? Janma, definitely. It won't be possible for one to exhaust all the effects in one birth and therefore the next birth. Because I have to own up what all I have done and therefore I am responsible for what I have done. And so I will have to take another embodiment to experience the results of all those actions which could not be exhausted in this birth. Ishta, anishta janma, that birth may be desirable or undesirable. It may be human birth or better, or it may be a lower birth. Sukha dukkha, in any birth or any embodiment, I am going to have the experience of sukha and dukkha, pleasure and pain. Sukha dukkha samprapta lakshana samsara. This alone is called samsara. Samsara is the series of embodiments which are results of the series of actions I perform, which embodiments constantly produce a series of experiences of the nature of pleasure and pain. Anuparato bhavati, a ceaseless existence of this limited embodied existence goes on when there is ignorance, which gives rise to sense of doership, which gives rise to the desire for results and so forth and so on. It gives rise to a ceaseless existence which is characterized by pleasure and pain. Ityatah samsara bija bhutau shokamoho. And therefore we have to say that the shoka and the moha, or grief and delusion, in fact, are the seed or the cause of what we call samsara in the form of repeated birth and death. And birth is a sense of a limited existence, because birth means embodiment. Embodiment means the limited existence and experience constantly of all kinds of limitations of the body, mind and intellect. And therefore, naturally, a constant current of a sense of limitation, inadequacy and therefore unhappiness. That is called samsara. Anuparato bhavati. It will not stop or cease until the knowledge comes. Thus, Shankaracharya, analyzing the case of Arjuna and then applying it to the human beings in general, comes to the conclusion here that it is shoka and the moha, or grief and delusion, which are really the fundamental problems of human life, which arise from yet fundamental problem, namely ignorance of the true nature of the self. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Vadarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.